Thanks, everyone. My name is Tim Hartung, and welcome to the Capa Space. For those who may not know us, we are an education and exhibition center, and tonight a theater. Sunday night was our first performance, which was just marvelous, and tonight another full house. So we were joking, maybe we should be a theater instead of a photographic gallery. But it's amazing that we can have the flexibility to do these kinds of programs. So we're really pleased that you're all here. Our mission is to foster and advance the belief that the community can use photography to advance the concepts of peace, equality, and justice. The Capa Space is dedicated to continuing the legacy of Robert and Cornell Capa's work as concerned photographers. That's one who is passionately dedicated to doing work that will contribute to the understanding or the well-being of humanity. Work that focuses with compassion, with intelligence, with warmth and generosity of spirit upon the human condition. As we sit here surrounded by the photos, the concerned photos of Robert Capa, we present George and Ruth Watt, Songs and Letters of the Spanish Civil War, as a way to understand the history of the war in a very personal way and imagine the horrors and suffering of those involved, as captured in these photos around us. If you haven't been here yet to the gallery, I encourage you to, might stay afterwards, but please come back. And we haven't had the curator and Terry Nauman in the audience here tonight. Thank you, Terry. These photos and this play are a reminder that the themes of justice, freedom, and love in these letters and songs remain sadly relevant today, as we witness the continuing atrocities of war around the world, and in particular, Ukraine. Today's performance is directed by Katie Schmidt-Fetter. George Watt is portrayed by Nick Nazario. Ruth Watt by Emma Gail Alpern. Music and vocals are performed by Albie Gorn, who's already been serenading us. Audiovisual and technical assistance by Gene Penchenko, and our videographer tonight is James Brooks. Thank you. I also want to thank the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, also known as ALBA, who provided access to tonight's script for the performance and intro video, which you're about to see, which is narrated by ALBA Board of Governors member Peter Glazer. I'd also like to recognize Jennifer Pleck, sitting here in front of me, from Arts Westchester. We just learned this week that we were a fortunate recipient of a grant from the New York Council of the Arts through Arts Westchester. And specifically for this play. So that was really great. And it also happens to be the first grant we ever received as the Capa Space. So hooray for us. I want to thank you all for coming, and we hope you enjoy the performance. And remember, we can't do this without you. Your continued support will help us to grow our programs and outreach to the community. I mean, needless to say, we are the board of Capa Space. We love Capa Space, and we love you for being here. So thank you very much, and enjoy the show.
George and Ruth Watt were a newly married couple in 1937, just 23 and 22 years old, when they jointly made the decision that George would join the fight to stop fascism in Spain, and Ruth would remain in New York to organize support for the cause of the Spanish Republic globally, and especially for the Americans risking their lives in Spain. George and Ruth met as student activists, helping to found the American Student Union, the ASU, a nationwide campus coalition of anti-war, anti-fascist student organizations. George resigned from leadership of the ASU to join Lincoln Battalion. The International Brigades drew 35,000 volunteers from 52 countries, including 2,800 Americans, to support the Spanish Republic's poorly equipped citizen army in their struggle against General Francisco Franco's experienced forces seeking to overthrow the elected government of Spain and oppose the fascist dictatorship. Franco's troops were supplied with up-to-date weapons, tanks, and planes by Hitler and Mussolini as the start of an attempt to bring all of Europe under fascist sway. The International Brigaders believed that if they prevailed against fascism in Spain, they could possibly prevent a Second World War. At 23, George was a raw recruit with no prior military training. He learned to be a soldier, to fire a gun. He was wounded in battle, recovered in a hospital, and was selected to be trained as an officer. Although war was raging, most of George's letters home described day-to-day life in training and between battles, and the camaraderie among the American and Spanish soldiers, written with a lightness and optimism that belied the danger he was facing. Although he doesn't report the progress of the war, he frankly describes some of the horrors that he observed. He writes about being wounded in his very first action, and about a time when the Lincoln Battalion was cut off and surrounded by fascist forces. George and some of his comrades fought their way through and escaped by swimming across the fast-flowing, icy Ebro River to rejoin the rest of the battalion. There, they were met by Ernest Hemingway, then a journalist reporting on the war for American newspapers. One of George's proudest moments came when the Lincoln Battalion received an ambulance paid for with funds raised by students of the American Student Union. Another came when he was appointed political commissar of the Lincoln Battalion, becoming one of the highest-ranking American officers in Spain. Ruth, who was an outspoken anti-fascist peace activist and campus leader during her years at Hunter College, held a day job to make ends meet, but her heart was with George in Spain and with her anti-fascist organizing. Her letters about daily life, political meetings, friends, and the movies she saw helped George keep his mind focused at home. She writes about organizing a boycott of Japanese silk and a citywide anti-fascist student demonstration in support of the Spanish Republic. She writes about her longing for George, imagining them together in romantic settings. Both she and George use humor at times, private jokes, and a bantering tone to cover up their loneliness and fear. Just a few months after George left Spain to return home in December 1938, the capital, Madrid, the last bastion of the Spanish Republic, fell to Franco's forces, unleashing a reign of terror and a fascist dictatorship that lasted more than 30 years. George and Ruth's son Dan was born in March 1940. Tragically, Ruth fell sick and died of unknown causes just 5 weeks later. George remarried Ruth's friend and fellow activist at Hunter College, Margie Wexler. In 1944, Dan's brother Steve was born. Dan grew up believing that Margie was his birth mother. At age 8, he was told about Ruth, but knew little about her. George fought against fascism again with the U.S. Army Air Corps in World War II. Following the war, he spent many years as a political organizer and later became a social worker and administrator. He died at age 80 in 1994, after which Dan and his wife Molly found a closed box that George had saved all his life. The box contained the letters of George and Ruth Watt. Dan came to know his birth mother, Ruth, for the first time. Dan and Molly wrote this play, drawing on the letters, to bring the history of the Spanish Civil War to life in a very personal way for the 21st century, showing the personal lives of the men who volunteered and the women who lived through it with them. We hope you enjoy our presentation.
Los cuatro generales, los cuatro generales, los cuatro generales, mamita mía, que swan alzado, que swan alzado. The four insurgent generals, the four insurgent generals, the four insurgent generals, mamita mia, they tried to betray us, they tried to betray us. At Christmas holy evening, at Christmas holy evening, at Christmas holy evening, mamita mia, they'll all be hanging, they'll all be hanging.
Dear Ruth, well, I'm here in Spain, and I feel great. As soon as I came into training camp, I was met by so many familiar faces among the other volunteers. My third day, and I feel like a veteran. I'm learning very fast. I shot a rifle for the first time in my life, made an excellent score. Just received my helmet and ammunition belt, and you should see me. The uniforms we wear in the Lincoln Battalion make me look just like an American doughboy in the World War. Sometimes I get the feeling that we're a bunch of Boy Scouts playing war. It's hard to imagine myself as a soldier.
Dear George, I'm terrifically busy nowadays. Imagine me, a working girl in New York. Sometimes it seems to me that I work an 8-day week, 25 hours a day. Even the movies I go to are part of the routine. I saw Paul Mooney starring in The Life of Emile Zola. It was really splendid. Of course, the Dreyfus Affair protest was sort of watered down for the screen, but nevertheless, the impact of Zola's political awakening was terrific. I saw it at the Hollywood Get Your Ticket in Advance theater. Everyone was dressed up to kill, except for me. I was dressed as though I was going on a hike. In an orange woolen dress, a brown corduroy jacket, and a brown beret. The lobby of the theater has a series of balconies overlooking the main hall. I swear, as I looked down from the highest balcony at all the swanky ladies and their escorts milling around me, I felt like making one of my famous speeches from the balustrade. I had a lot of fun imagining their expressions if I had. I'm sure only the vision of your commonsensical, restraining hand kept me from it. George, do you realize we have a celebration coming soon? Our first anniversary, remember? So, just imagine when you go to sleep, I say, push over, and I crawl in next to you, and you say, brr, you're cold, and I say, my, you're lovely and warm. Later, you are dying to go to sleep, but I won't let you, because of the way I keep kissing the corner of your eye and rubbing my nose in your cheek and fiddling with your hair and murmuring silly things. And then you just turn around and go to sleep. And even then, I rub my face in your back and I'm so happy. I fall asleep too.
Dear Muchachkala, at long last, I got your letter. I had lamb stew, French fried potatoes, and your letter for my main dish. I had grapes, lemonade, and your letter for dessert. Well, there's hardly any need to say what difference your letter made. It's much easier now facing artillery and machine guns than it was before. was really worried that I wouldn't hear from you before we went into action. Well, I'm happy. That's all. Very, very happy. You're right about my new vitality and depth of experience. Well, my new vitality consists of infiltration by running and flopping towards the enemy, usually done on very thorny, rocky ground. My depth of experience comes from digging foxholes. Yesterday, our entire section was transferred into a Spanish company. This was done to strengthen the Spanish group. This is just the chance that most of us have been waiting for. Now we're doing the job the international brigades were really meant to do. That is, to teach. We in the Lincoln Battalion cannot win the war for the Spanish people. They are the ones to do that. Now I've got to learn Spanish, and I'm learning it over a machine gun for a rifle. And at night, to the music of a guitar and the dance of flamenco. Today we spent all morning teaching our Spanish comrades all about the machine gun, about the rifle. We helped them take their guns apart, clean them, and then, in our own Spanish, explained how things worked. Last night, they invited us to their bunks, holes in the ground, filled with grass and covered with reeds. They played the guitar, and we danced and sang in the moon. Tonight, they're coming over to our bunks, and we'll entertain them with more material things, like coffee.
Last week, at a meeting, a fellow led the group in some new Spanish Civil War songs. You could see how everyone really loved those songs by the way they joined in the singing. Everyone really supports the Spanish people's struggle.
Viva la que se brigada, viva la que se brigada, es día gobierno de gloria, Emanuela, Emanuela, es día gobierno de gloria, Emanuela, Emanuela. Long live the 15th Brigade boys, long live the 15th Brigade boys. Oh, her name is Brandon Claudius, Emanuela, Emanuela. Oh, her name is Brandon Claudius, Emanuela, Emanuela. Against the foes we aim our rifles, against the foes we aim our rifles. Death to the hirelings of the fascists, Emanuela, Emanuela. Death to the hirelings of the fascists, Emanuela, Emanuela. We have only one desire, we have only one desire. Forever in the fascist terror, Emanuela, Emanuela. Forever in the fascist terror, Emanuela, Emanuela. At Harama we are standing, at Harama we are standing. And we have no planes above us, not a tank nor any cannon, Emanuela. And we have no planes above us, not a tank nor any cannon, Emanuela.
Yesterday, I lay awake, trying to trace my understanding of war. As a young child, it was something dreadful that my parents used to talk about. I had nightmares about people who were called Huns, who used to come into people's houses and sharpen their axe in front of their eyes. They would cut off everybody's heads, including my sister's. It's true they never got me. I think the reason they spared me was, in all my nightmares, I was beautiful. That stage of understanding was soon over. War was something I read about and studied in high school for its cause, effect, main events, heroes, and outstanding debts to the United States. Movies on the World War were exciting, but a little boring, except in the love interest sections. I became conscious of the political and economic nature of war 4 or 5 years ago. I shouted slogans and argued at anti-war conferences in college. I was honestly sincere in my fervent denunciation of war, even emotional, but still sort of abstract. Well, war isn't so abstract today. It presses down on us.
We are now in reserve position. Near, but not at the front. Fellows are busy cleaning new rifles we were just issued. I wasn't issued a rifle. Instead, I have the special honor of being a machine gunner for our section. Boy, how I love that gun. Got it last night. Took it apart, put it together a dozen times. This morning, I couldn't sleep, and I got up at dawn to look at that gun again. It's too heavy for one man, so another man and I operated. It is the pride of our section. It's a light machine gun, and has the firepower of 60 riflemen. So you see, pretty important. Present, deciding on a name for the gun. But whatever it's called, I shall secretly name it after you. Baby Ruth. You'd be surprised. There's many similarities to you. It's beautiful. A little awkward in spots. A little heavy. And oh, how I love to strip it. Treat it with such a tenderness and actually sleep with it under my blanket. It's got to be protected. That gun means the life of the boys. Baby Ruth shoots straight from the shoulder and isn't gonna miss.
A Spaniard who hails from Alcala, when angered would shout mucha mala. He'd toss a grenade at the Spanish brigade and blow all those fascists to hell up. Yippee-yi-yi-yi-yi. Yippee-yi-yi-yi-yi. Oh, the Lincoln Battalion by Cracky, a bunch of brave bozos, the wacky. They held down the line for months at a time against Franco, Il Duce's lackey. Yippee-yi-yi-yi-yi. Yippee-yi-yi-yi-yi. 'Twas there on the plains of Brunetti, midst the hail of steel confetti, with our planes and our tanks we would smash Franco's ranks. Got sick on Italian spaghetti. Yippee-yi-yi-yi-yi. Yippee-yi-yi-yi-yi. Oh, the Lincoln boys fought at Jarama. They made all those fascists cry, mama. They were holding the line for months at a time. For sport, they would play with a bomber. Yippee-yi-yi-yi-yi. Yippee-yi-yi-yi-yi.
Give my regards to your machine gun. I wish our machine gun could be with you in Spain. I swear I'd never jam or be awkward, even in spots. I'd keep myself spotlessly cleaned and oiled. Honestly, I'd be no trouble at all. And if we ever got in a really tough spot, I'd just start singing. That would scare the enemy away. All right. Maybe sometimes after the day's work was over, I'd sidle up to you like those French women you wrote about and say, Voulez-vous un chez moi cette nuit?
It was yesterday that I first realized the actuality of the war. An order came through for a labor detail. 8 of us marched 2 kilometers in a pouring rain through 6 inches of mud and water to the next town. Then we were told we were going on to Belchite. The truck drove us over mountain ridges and flat tableland. It was an open truck, and the rain lashed us in the face and feet. We passed our former frontline trenches. They are narrow, zigzag, and deep, with sandbags piled on parapets, half flooded with water, foreshadowing what we'll have to face in the trenches this season. On both sides of the road, stretched barbed wire and heavy steel spikes at an angle inclined towards us. Spikes are arranged in groups of 4 and are used to stop tanks. The open spaces between spikes are explosive mines. The approach to Belchite is beautiful. The road is on a high plateau, which tapers off at Belchite. On both sides, fertile valleys surround the city. But Belchite itself, what a sight. The most miserable, depraving, horrible and horrifying, stinking, reeking, etc., sight I'd ever seen. War pictures cannot tell the story, ever. It's my first taste, smell of war. Of course, not direct. I merely witnessed the results in one little community. It made me hate all the more the bastards who forced this destruction upon human beings. Not one house was left untouched. Holes in the walls and floors, debris piled 6 feet high, and in the debris, pieces of bricks, furniture, mortar, ammunition belts, pieces of human flesh and bone. In one courtyard, I tripped over the body of a fascist, partially decayed. He's wearing only one shoe, his other foot stockinged. Strangely, I thought of that nursery rhyme. My son John went to bed with his stocking on. One shoe off, one shoe on. I didn't think of just death or disgust. Blended too easily with the rest of the picture. The entire town was fortified with sandbags and windows, barricades in the streets, and a maze of underground tunnels, which led through every part of the city. Now, we're waiting on the trucks. This time, we're certain it's for the front. We hope.
Yesterday, our friend Dave Angles came home from Spain. When I went into the office and saw him standing in the doorway, I was speechless. All I could do was wring his hand. Dave talked into the small hours of the morning. Then I found 2 letters from you. Your letters, Dave's remarks, both very blunt, very matter-of-fact, very human. How can I tell you what I felt, what I learned? Darling, I see Spain and you. Oh, I know it's not accurate, not complete. I guess I should say I feel Spain and you. Dave told us of Parama, Brunete, Quinto, Belchite, showing us the details by moving around knives and plates and sandwiches on the table. He described the time that Americans were caught in a barn, the time a group was forced to stay in a trench near the church for a full day in the hot sun without food or water, the taking of the church, the taking of the last stronghold, the last big house. What's it like to go over the top? I asked. Well, he said, the first and last 5 minutes are the hardest. The first 5, you think, it would be a shame if they got you before you could do anything. Then you just go ahead and do what you're told. Then at the end, you can't help thinking, it would be a shame if they got you after all you've gone through. You get pretty used to death, but you can't help feeling badly about the comrades who died before they got a chance to show what they could do. I read the news dispatches from Bilbao, and I must admit, my heart's in my mouth. But I've decided not to worry until there's something to worry about. Don't forget, you must write me all about everything.
Darling, I'm trying desperately to write for the past 2 days. The whole thing's too close, too real to represent words. The first day we came up into the lines, we attacked. And the Lincolns made history that day. I'm writing this letter from a military hospital in Reus. Don't worry, darling. I'm not hit seriously. It's only a flesh wound, and it'll heal in a couple days. I got it while giving first aid to a pal of mine whom you don't know. He got it through the stomach. I'm suffering indescribable torture, lying right in the midst of the thickest fire. I rushed over, tore his clothes off, and started bandaging him when I felt a sharp sting through my left hand and right shoulder. No pain, just surprise. Darn glad I had my wits about me, because I mustered all my strength and all his strength to get both of us behind a little slope where the bullets whizzed right over our heads. The Lincolns occupied the left flank. It was the flanking fire we went into, which was so deadly. The fascists were strongly entrenched. We met with terrific resistance. But you should have seen how we walked into it like veterans. None of us flinched. Really, none of us. Everyone's talking about our fine work. And when I lay in the field, after having crawled from comrade to comrade because my wound was not so serious, and I was able to move about, giving all the first aid I could, I felt a strange elation the way we all acted. I'd taken the test of fire and passed. And I'm going back as quickly as possible. I want you to know how much I love you. How much I've loved you out there under the fire. On every sing and pang of a bullet and cannon told me how much I loved you. Out there in the field, I was so calm. I tried to sleep and thought of you. And the movement and you were one. I'm all skin and bones. Yet the bullets find plenty of flesh in my arm and shoulder to plow through without touching any vital spot. You should see my suede jacket, all full of bullet holes. She never touched my body. Right shoulder wound, and I'm writing this with my right hand. Lucky, eh?
Si me quieres escribir, ya sabes mi paradero. Si me quieres escribir y sabes mi paradera, en el frente de candela primera llena de fuego. En el frente de candela primera llena de fuego. If you want to write to me, you know where you can always find me. If you want to write to me, you know where you can always find me. In the wide front of Gandesa, in the midst of every battle. On the wide front of Gandesa, in the midst of every battle. If you want a bite to eat, good food, and not too many pesos. If you want a bite to eat, good food, and not too many pesos on that bloody battlefield, there's an inn where you are welcome. On that bloody battlefield stands an inn where you are welcome. And at the entrance of the inn, there waits a Moor by name Mohammed. The entrance to the inn, there waits a Moor by name Mohammed, who warmly greets you hearty, hearty. Bread and spicy food will await you. Who warmly greet you hurry, hurry. Bread and spicy food await you. And the first dish that they serve, hot grenades in quick succession. And the first dish that they serve, hot grenades in quick succession, followed by a burst of shrapnel, makes a meal you will remember. Followed by a burst of shrapnel, makes a meal you will remember.
Dear George, the last letter you wrote was written from the hospital, but I have the feeling you're back in service by now. Let me tell you about our state convention. It opened with a flourish in a swanky hotel in Brooklyn. What a place! Elegant is the word for it. Long mirrors, gleaming walls, thick carpets, huge auditorium ballroom. There was the usual stuff, singing Star Spangled Banner, much taking of pictures. Then, Mike read a letter from Spain, received that very morning, signed by Solly, Hyde, Joe, you, and the others. It was one of the finest letters any of us had ever heard. The audience response was overwhelming. I, myself, just curled up and almost died. Then, after the discussion period, round tables, and giving my 10-minute report, well, by the end of the day, I was a wreck. And there was still the dance in the evening. Now, you know, I can't dance very well, and I was tired. By some quirk, I danced all evening with people who seemed to delight in throwing their partners halfway across the floor and back, jerking, twisting, cavorting madly, and ending with Austrian dips.
Ruth, I just got your letter reacting to my blighting. I know just how you felt when you received the news. I think I know what it is that bothers you the most. You needn't worry about not being with me. You share in everything I do and feel in Spain. But it's a long time to be apart. Remember that old army song from the World War? Old soldiers never die, they just fade away. Do you remember I said there's humor here? Remember the movie All Quiet on the Western Front? Soldiers had humor there too. It was bitter. Grim substitute for lack of interest and morale. The boys tease each other here and kid the townspeople. It's natural as, well, as anything's natural. And they make up new words to old songs. Here's the latest.
There is cheese, cheese that brings you to your knees in the store. In the store, there is cheese, cheese that brings you to your knees in the quartermaster's store. And there is tea, tea, but not for you and me. In the store, in the store, in the store, in the store. There is tea, tea, but not for you and me. In the quartermaster's store. And there are rats, rats, in bowler hats and spats. In the store, in the store. There are rats, rats, in bowler hats and spats. In the quartermaster's store. And there are beans, beans that make you fill your jeans. In the store, in the store. There are beans, beans that make you fill your jeans. In the quartermaster's store.
Darling, since Japan is still terrorizing China, I've work to do. I'm enclosing a leaflet put out by the League. When I read the first paragraph, I burst out with a howl of laughter. My first reaction was, we girls will have to go naked. Life is hardly worth living. Johnny asked me what all the mirth was about. I told him. Whereupon he grew very stern and demanded that I recognize the seriousness of a boycott against Japan. If I thought a boycott against Japanese silk was something to laugh about, I ought to read the latest copy of Life magazine explaining that no boycott movement could be successful unless women gave up wearing silk stockings. And he withdrew into his office in a huff. I followed him to explain I had no difficulty with him or with Life magazine. My outburst had been entirely due to the sophomoric presentation. The same idea could have been put across without making the League a laughingstock with slogans no one except hardened Bolsheviks would carry out. The leaflet could have started simply with why a boycott was necessary. Then, every time you go into a store to buy silk stockings, silk underwear, silk scarves, ask your salesgirl, does the silk come from Japan? When she says yes, go to the store manager, complain and protest. Insist that he put out a more varied display of cotton, lisle, and rayon garments. In this way, a popular revolt against Japanese goods can be created. And you can feel instrumental in creating the latest and most truly up-to-date styles. Johnny's eyes twinkled as he said, "It means a sacrifice for the men, too." He patted my shoulder and assured me he agreed with every word I said. The fuss I made involved me in an interesting assignment, to draw up an information bulletin to be sent to all progressive organizations on what a boycott means in practical terms. All on the do you know how much the US imports from Japan? How much comes from silks? What that means in terms of ammunition? What substitutes can be used? What can be done about making the substitutes popular? It means some research, but mostly I intend to do a lot of window shopping. Say, can't you just see me, Madame Ruth, style creator?
Right now, hospital life is a brief strange interlude. Ben Cassim is a beautiful sea resort with palm trees, white sand, palatial villas formerly belonged to the idle rich. As I write this, I face the Mediterranean, and straight out, about 150 miles, is Majorca, now fascist. Mussolini has 200,000 Italian troops ready to land at Castellón, 10 miles south of here, in an attempt to drive 75 miles to Teruel. This would cut off Spain from France. This would mean world war. In spite of this, the place is an oasis of peace, quiet, beauty. I find myself every now and then making love to a person 4,000 miles away. Walk along the beach and talk out loud to her as if she were present. I wait for her answers to my queries, and of course, know exactly what she will say. So you see, my dear, when I come home and talk to you with a faraway look in my eyes, you'll understand. It's only from a force of habit.
Something nice happened late Sunday afternoon. I scoured the neighborhood trying to find a copy of the Sunday Times. Finally, I located a dinky stand on the corner of Avenue A and 15th Street. Two boys about 17 years old were in charge. There were 3 copies of the Times on display, but because of the day-long drizzle, they were wet and torn. "Don't you have a clean one?" I asked. "Nah, all sewed out. You gotta take what you can get," said one of the boys. The other looked at me and then said menacingly, "Give it to her." "Aw, what's the matter? You cracked," the first one said. But he reached into a box and picked out a solitary, dry newspaper. The second guy grinned until his teeth almost fell out. "Say, you mug," he said to his friend, "can't you see? She's wearing the Liberty Bell. Them can have anything we got." I was wearing a pin put out by the Friends of the Lincoln Battalion. Wasn't that nice? George. I was hurrying home very late last night along First Avenue. The street was pitch black and entirely deserted. I was more than a little frightened and tense. Suddenly, I thought, gee, I wouldn't be a bit scared if I was walking with you. The strangest thing happened. Not only did I lose my silly fright, but suddenly the whole street came to life. Every store, every shop seemed to have a character of its own. I was suddenly delighted by the queer, almost unreal array of names on the store windows. Greek next to Polish, next to Finnish, next to German, next to English, next to Jewish. I realized what a vast and thickly populated city New York is. When you're caught in a subway jam or crawl along 14th Street on Saturday afternoon shopping rush, why, you just take the mob for granted. But when at night you see empty block after empty block of dingy streets with grocery stores, fruit, fish, meat markets, bakeries, all crowded together, when you reflect on how many thousands of times those blocks are replicated, why, then you feel the millions of people of all ages and nationalities who, somewhere in the sleeping city, provide the basis for metropolitan life. Do you know what, George? You're a great comfort to me.
Dear Ruth, I was interrupted in my writing by a strange procession which filed by me. It was the funeral of the German comrade who died yesterday. Everything was done to protect him. Blood donors were called, and I volunteered. The doctor took one look at my cheekbones and said no. What a contribution of blood he must have done. Spanish, American, French. Comrade who was dead was an anti-fascist under Hitler. He came to Spain to continue his bitter struggle against the fascists who tortured him and his family. He was wounded here 3 times, each time going back into the lines. You know, you get hardened out here to the thought of death and suffering. You can't help feeling that choking feeling that makes you want to cry and shout, curse.
Weil den Schützen brachen, in der Stunde der Gefahr, mit der einsamen Brigade, alles voll Hass geladen, stand Hans der Kommissar. Stand Hans der Kommissar. Which rips out lying trenches in the hour of danger grim, with the International Shock Brigade, his heart with hatred all ablaze, stood Hans the Commissar. Stood Hans the Commissar. Because he fought for freedom, he was forced to leave his home near the blood-stained Manzanares, where he led the fight to hold Madrid. Died Hans the Commissar. Died Hans the Commissar. A bullet came a-flying from his fascist fatherland. The shot struck home, the aim was true, the rifle barrel well made too. Ein deutsches Schießgewehr, a German army gun. With heart and hand I pledge you, as I load my gun again, you will never be forgotten, nor the enemy forgiven. Einst mein Love, Kommissar. Einst mein Love, Kamera.
We don't cry here, but I had difficulty keeping my eyes dry. As the funeral passed, each villa, every comrade who could possibly walk fell into line. Men on crutches, using canes, arms in slings, heads bandaged. And as I marched along, I couldn't help thinking of my comrades who were killed beside me that day. I couldn't give them a funeral, and this became their funeral. At the cemetery, 3 languages were spoken: French, Spanish, and German. And I understood all 3. I felt such a spirit of internationalism as I've never felt before. A volley of 3 shots by the assault guards. Then we sang the Internationale in Italian, French, German, Spanish, English, Czech.
Arise, ye prisoners of starvation, arise, ye wretched of the earth, as justice and as condemnation are better worlds in birth. No more
George, it's the first day of spring. I feel delicious. That feeling you get when you've just taken a bath and washed your hair, and every stitch of clothes you're in wearing is freshly laundered, and you're wearing a crisp starched blouse, and the sun is shining down on you. It's hard to work, hard to think. The week behind you seems unreal, and you aren't really prepared for the clamor of the week ahead. Hazy, lazy, lovely feeling. I want to walk in slow swishes through tall grasses, and then stand on top of a great hill and laugh my head off. And I want to turn around and find you there laughing too. And then we talk of vague things like how small the people below look, and do you think they can see us too? And what do you suppose it would be like to work on a farm? Then you take off your lumber jacket, I sit down on it, and you stretch out and put your head on my lap. And we look up at the sky and say more vague things. Then one of my legs starts to cramp. But I don't say anything. Only shift around. And you say, "Are you comfortable?" And I say, "Sure, are you?" And then I straighten out your eyebrows or something.
Darling, officers training school is a pretty tough business. From the time we get up at 5:15 a.m. to bedtime, there is not a moment to spare. It's just as tough as grind. In fact, tougher than I ever faced when I was going to college at Cooper Union. Half the day is lectures and theory. The other half is divided between fieldwork, firing, mapping, stripping and cleaning machine guns and rifles, parade, mess, political education, work, and shining my shoes. Don't laugh when I mention shining my shoes. It's very important in the Army. It's hardly underestimated.
Soldier, 2, 3, soldier, 2, 3. Work that we must do. March on in the workers' united front, for you are workers too. Just because it's you, and would like a bill bite to eat. You can get full of now by the talk that won't give me bread and tea. Wisdom, los tres, wisdom, los tres, aún la quiero go. Porque este pueblo afiliente en el frente va volar.
The Army's taking on the form and shape of a real army. Discipline is today the central factor in our Army. That means discipline in work, obeying commands, and in personal appearance. So we future officers have to be model soldiers in every respect. It's not so easy to change lifelong habits, but it's got to be done. We're learning real stuff here. Maybe when we get home, we'll become ROTC instructors. I understand that the U.S. Army is proud of the Americans fighting in Spain.
Seis, fine, alphabet in vexiculos. Jede Traufolks ein Mann, jede Weggesang, wenn du gehst und verlust. Marchando, marchando.
Now, even the miraculous weather can't keep my mind from planning the meetings for the coming week. And what a week it's going to be. Brooklyn College, NYU, City Main, and City 23rd will all have a 1-hour student strike at 11 a.m. Hunter and Columbia will have noon-hour demonstrations. All the evening schools will have torchlight parades to celebrate their stoppages. These demonstrations are being led by the American Student Union, with endorsements by most of the student councils. And the school newspapers promise special editions. The strikes and demonstrations align around 5 main points. The U.S. must participate in a world conference of peace-loving nations, lift the embargo on loyalist Spain, withdraw Hitler's troops from Austria, halt murderous attacks on Catholics and Jews, boycott Japanese goods. Someone has arranged for an airplane to fly over the demonstration with a 60-foot streamer. Stop Hitler and save peace.
So, 2, 3, so left, 2, 3. We must do. March on in the workers united front. Only one workers true.
Ruth, you promise you won't tell a soul. I'll tell you something that otherwise you won't know. Just found out that I was cited for bravery for dressing a wounded comrade under fire. Now, I don't think I deserve it, because there's so many things done under fire that are just as brave and braver. Many of them go unnoticed. It makes it feel kind of silly. So many guys, done better than me. So don't spread this part of my letter around to anybody. Please. Remember how I used to ball you out for smoking stubs? Well, the tables are turned. Now we have a system of butts. If you see a guy with a cigarette, you yell, "Butts." Someone else sees it first, you yell, "Butts on butts." Butch tried this one at our party last Saturday night. He dropped half a cigarette, an overgrown butt, while someone was singing, and the whole mob rushed to get the butt. But Butch was faster and had it in his mouth again with the scramble of guys still on the floor. So you can go on smoking. You send us the butts.
I went to a huge rally for the release of Tom Mooney, still in prison for suspected involvement and therefore convicted of the Market Street bombing. Unproven, but blaming the union organizer is what they do. His case is coming before the Supreme Court. It was a swell gathering. I'm sending you the Times clippings, which don't half do it justice. LaGuardia brought the house down with a regular arm-waving oration. It was a very sincerely friendly and ardent meeting. Everyone roared at the stalest jokes. Everyone applauded every other sentence of each speaker. Speaker's opening remarks were interesting. They varied from "Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen," to "fellow citizens," to "fellow workers." When the journalist Haywood Brewing spoke, he drawled out, "Just everybody, we need Tom. He's not only a symbol, he's a power in his own right. Why, once, when I gave a half promise to go to California and speak at a Mooney rally, and I didn't show up, Mooney called me up on the phone from San Quentin And boys, he bawled the daylights out of me. He sure took my pants down. And if he can be like that over the telephone, can you imagine what he'd be like leading the picket line at the Brooklyn Daily Eagle? We newspaper men need Tom right now. Everyone feels very confident that Mooney will soon be free.
Well, kid, got all your packages yesterday and the day before. Johnny, Joe Taylor, Pete Kelly, myself. I got the tobacco, coffee, salmon, Hershey's Kisses, chewing gum, and the blue leather jacket. It's just like the woman in you to think of a color to match my eyes. We usually think of colors to match the ground. But everyone likes the jacket. It's probably thinking of 101 different ways of organizing it for me. At any rate, I can expect a lot of guys to follow me around in the next action. This is always the standard joke in these parts. The thing that amazes the boys around here most is this whole string of guys who get packages from one Ruth Watt. Strange phenomenon that gives rise to all sorts of speculative wisecracks. Your packages are appreciated so much that Milt has started to call you our wife. Most of the stuff we receive from home is immediately divided among the fellows. It still makes the man who receives a package directly feel good. So I'm conveying all their thanks to you, my dear.
Dear George, when I got to the office, I found the package you sent me from Valencia. How well you know the things I love. That textbook, those fairy tales. Really, I'm speechless, and I love you until I ache. I feel a little at a loss about where and how to write you. I feel sort of foolish knowing that by the time letters get to you, the letters I've written to you in training camp are received in reserve position. When written to reserve position, you get them in the hospital. When written to the hospital, you're in Valencia. To Valencia, you're in training camp. Honest, it makes me dizzy. And I know you're changing and growing daily. How can my letters meet those changes in you? We'll have to get to know each other all over again when you get home. It could be loads of fun. But I confess I'm a little scared. You don't suppose you'll stop loving me or something, do you?
Darling, believe everything now. Hair Breath Harry, Nick Carter, Baron Munchausen. There isn't one of them that's had the hairbreadth escapes some of us have had in the last couple of days. A group of us were surrounded by fascists. We were behind fascist lines for 3 days, fighting on machine gun, shelled by our team, bombed from the air, caught by fascist patrols, attacked twice by cavalry, which we repulsed. The climax? Swimming across the Ebro River. Lucky I can swim. There were 3 of us together, naked and wet except for our hats, in which we kept our military books and wallets. We walked for a couple of hours over rocks, little rocks, the kind that cut your feet. Through shrubs until we hit the road and ran into the brigade where Herbie Matthews and Ernie Hemingway met us and got that story you read in the papers. For the next 4 or 5 days, boys kept coming in. Each time another comrade arrived, it was rejoicing. So you came through, you bastard. No fascist son of a bitch could ever get you. Now our battalion is almost full strength again. The morale, the highest I've ever seen in Spain. This is May 21st. Excellent fighting weather. Cold wind and hot sun. By the time you get this, the newspapers will probably be reporting great victories for loyalist Spain. It was 2 years of war. Still, the spirit is even higher. All of Spain is singing songs of struggle and victory. Just listen to us.
On the 18th of July, on a lovely Spanish patio, Madrid's anti-fascist heroes on their Quinto Rey. Join in the struggle, hear the avenging machine gun. It will be the end of Franco. It will be the end of Franco. In the 4th Battalion, Madrid so bravely defended, fighting in Spain's fiercest battles, are the greatest of every day. Del quinto, 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 del quinto regimiento. To the front, Madre, I'm leaving, for I too will kill the fascists. And la dinametralladora, e Franco se va a paseo, e Franco se va a paseo.
Well, kid, I'm in top form, except for a sprained ankle and some small bits of shrugging of my hand. Just been entrusted the greatest responsibility I've ever been held. I'm now the political commissar of the Lincoln Battalion. I wanted to give Johnny something to take back to you. Honestly, there wasn't a thing on me. When I swam the river, every stretch of clothes and possessions, except for my military book and wallet, which had no money, and my beret, where I carried these things, gone with the crew. So I gave Johnny an international brigade envelope for you. I also sent along one of our indispensable rope lighters for cigarettes. Very useful weapon. I'm sure you'll be the center of attention when you pull the long rope out of your purse and begin to work the wheel. The first 6 weeks you have it, it will take you no more than 15 minutes to light each other. Let me know how it works.
Johnny came home and gave me your gifts. Phew. You said that for the first 6 weeks, it would take me 15 minutes to light that trench lighter. Darling, you flatter me. In the 3 solid hours, I lit the darn thing 3 times and covered the palm of my hand with blisters. To my eternal credit, though, I think it should be stated that the last time I did it in 21 and a half minutes flat. Johnny gave it to me just before the evening session of the state convention. I didn't realize it, but it made a disruptor out of me. There I sat, quietly engrossed in lighting my cigarette from the lighter. Suddenly, someone 2 tables away threw me a pack of matches. Then, someone from the balcony threw a whole box of them. Then, in front of me, behind me, and to the sides of me, delegates offered me a light. Finally, a vet came over and lit that rope in one stroke. Gee
I
whiz.
knew you would like the rope lighter. It's much better than matches. Hell, matches light on the first strike, usually. Rope lighters require a little skill and patience. They can be very nicely tied about the neck or waist, if the rope is long enough.
About the rope lighter, do you know, I'm beginning to agree with you that as a practical lighter, it is a very superior article. I have finally learned how to light it with one stroke. This is how I do it. Daintily, I coil it about my waist. Coyly, I then slip it around my throat. Slippily, I slide it through my bracelet. I pick up the end with my left hand and, placing it precisely between my thumb and forefinger, I hold it up to the window. I gauge the distance with the utmost care. And finally and flourishingly, with my right hand, I strike a match. Bingo! It's lit with one stroke. Remember that letter you wrote to New Utrecht High School thanking them for the green scarf? Well, it created a sensation. Hi Greenspan read it in his class. You could have heard a pin drop. It spread like wildfire. Can you imagine the word got around? 3 graduates of New Utrecht in the leadership of the Lincoln Battalion. Boy, oh boy, did you hear that George Watt said he learned to swim at Utrecht, and that's how come he could swim across the Ebro? It's scheduled to be read in every English and history class in school. I couldn't help getting excited seeing the picture of Milt and Hemingway, and half of you. Hemingway was always one of my favorite authors. Many years ago, I read The Sun Also Rises and almost all of his other books. It took me quite some time to untwist myself from the rabble he left me in. I've been afraid to reread any of his books. Afraid if I had to judge them by present critical standards, I'd have to relegate them to the limbo of many former treasures. But just a few weeks ago, I read his latest book, To Have and Have Not. I was tremendously relieved. It was a fine book.
Bill Wheeler is back in Spain. First thing he says is, "It's great to be in Spain again." Dear Ruth, please tell everyone to stop writing letters to the boys here to come home, as if we're had some prison sentence and our time is.
George, there's something I've wanted to talk to you about for a long time. I've had many conversations up at the league office with the mothers, fathers, wives, sisters, brothers, uncles, aunts, cousins, and sweethearts of fellows in Spain.
People back home need to appreciate the seriousness of the situation.
I shuddered when one of them told me they'd written telling the boys they should return home.
There can be no going home for anyone here until victory of Spain is guaranteed. Right now, we can't think of home.
I tried to explain very patiently why it was no use, why it's wrong and bad, and that the fellows don't like getting those letters.
Got enough to think about homes in Spain being destroyed by the fascists. The homes in the States are still pretty safe from bombardments.
I think it did some good, but I'm troubled by it. I can certainly sympathize with feelings of most of these people. But if they say those things in letters, which I hope they stop doing, they should be told bluntly. That sort of stuff is worse for morale than Franco propaganda.
But for us, there's no complaint. When the willing time to pass, one day we shall cry rejoicing, all and dear, you're mine at last. Then will keep our soldiers, hearts no more with their spirits true.
Just got your package. 2 cablegrams. Cables were a shock and a thrill. Very pleased to get them. Somehow, I thought of you and me in Paris. Something I could only dream about in my most dreamy mood. Yet, I'm about to cable you the following. Take it easy, comrade. Political commissars are the last to leave. In addition to that, the battalion's still in the lines. As long as we're here, I cannot see my way through with foreign leaves or repatriation. We still have a job to perform. When that job is over, I'm sure the time is very short to be able to leave. Not only for a leave, but for home. I'll let you know when the time comes. Talk of the future of the International Brigade is quite widespread. There's lots of speculation and rumors. And see how much courage it takes for the men who know all this, whose minds have already begun to turn across the ocean, to stay and fight. Yet everyone is working and prepared to fight just as before.
Darling, this is what I do on weekends whenever I get sort of fed up. Saturday night, instead of going out somewhere, I come home, read Collier's magazine, wash my hair, turn on the radio, curl up in my bathrobe, my wine-knotted one, the Ripper, and soon fall asleep. Around midnight, I wake up, my toes feel cold, crawl under the blanket, explain all my troubles to you, and then fall asleep. Sunday, the radio I forgot to turn off wakes me. Get up early, clean the house, wash clothes, gossip with Adeline, read the paper, iron clothes. Most of the day is gone. Make supper, and then the most important thing of all. Other factors of such a weekend may vary. This one never does. I get out all your letters, and gradually, as I go from beginning to end, I begin to thaw, and my heart starts singing, and my head clears up.
There's no need telling you about the momentous decision made by Prime Minister Negri and the Spanish government. If they're able to dispense with our services, it's only further proof of our inevitable victory, of the strength of our army. Our battalion was in the front lines until the very last moment. You can't know how proud the fellows here are to be the last Americans to take front in Spain. The last 2 months, the hardest 2 months fighting this war to see to date. I'll tell you all about it when I get home.
To you, beloved comrade,
it was good to hear from you. At the end of the letter, you wrote, Salud y Victoria y Ruthia, darling. But tell me, who is this Dame Victoria? When I was a little girl, I used to be frightened by the sorrowful faces of the nuns I passed on the street. But hey, now I can appreciate at least one reason for it. Say you hurry up home. The abstention has grown wearier.
This should be me instead of this letter. But just as the rest of the boys were going home, I got the grip, sent to the hospital. I'm perfectly well now. Walk around the hospital in town and feel all my strength coming back. The doctors say I'm still not strong enough to make the mad dash through France and withstand the rigorous winter ocean voyage. So wait another week, which is what I have to do. You have no idea how the minutes and hours weigh upon me. Been away from home and you for a year and a half now. There aren't many veterans who've been away that long. But if I can't make it home for Christmas or New Year's, which I'm certain I can't, I'll surely make it home in time for our second wedding anniversary. And that's something. Then celebrate. I love you so much. So hurry up and wait for me.
I saw the film Blockade yesterday. I don't know if you've heard of it yet. It's really a remarkable thing to come out of Hollywood. It's supposed to be a nonpartisan indictment of the bombardment of civilians, of the destruction of peaceful homes. In the course of telling the story of a peasant boy, the film shows why people continue to resist, what the land and liberty mean to them. There is a powerful humanitarian appeal in the picture of how innocent inhabitants of a town suffer under an unfair blockade, but continue to resist. Some of the implications for the world as a whole are brought out by sympathetic foreign newspaper man. But the part that hit home most, as it was meant to do, were the closing lines. In somewhat the approved Hollywood fashion, the hero saves the food ship and exposes the traitors. The military commandant thanks him and promises him and his girl a leave as soon as possible, saying, "Maybe you can find a little peace and happiness." Peace? Says the boy. How can there be peace for anyone while our land and people are being destroyed by murderers? Then he turns directly to the audience as the curtains close and through clenched teeth says, "The world can stop it. Where is the conscience of the world?"
There's a valley in Spain called Rama. It's a place that we all know so well. It was there that we gave of our manhood, where many of our brave comrades fell. We are proud of the Lincoln Battalion and the fight for Madrid that they made. There they fought like true sons of the people as part of the 15th Brigade. Now we're far from that valley of sorrow, but their memories we never will forget.